The One Micronesia Podcast is brought to you by Docomo Pacific. Better together.
Hafa, and we are back. Another week, another episode. And in this episode, I am stoked to sit down and just chit chat and find out how things went and how life's going, and find out how she the journey from where it all started from her, and now that she's built a whole career around her and what she's doing here on Guam. So we're going to get to know all about that. But on the podcast with us here today, I do have the one, the only, the amazing Tasi Ada, who is a physical therapist at the Custom Fitness. So Tasi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us more about you.
Well, born and raised here on the beautiful island of Guam, particularly in Maina. At 29 years old, doctor of physical therapy, newly minted. Other things that I've been known for here on the island is being heavily involved on the rugby scene as an athlete, and both in part with the Guam Rugby Football Union for other roles too. And in addition to the Guam National Olympic Committee, so serving as the Athletes Commission president for a time, and a number of other sports delegate roles too, representing Guam. So it's just a little bit about me.
And that's amazing. I think we're gonna get to it, because I think your role and your participation in sports that kind of led you to building that love for physical therapy. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. So let's talk more about the sports things, because I know on the link when you were talking to the crew, you said you did multiple sports. It wasn't just rugby. You did other things too. So let's talk more about the different sports that you participated in over the years.
Yeah, so I originally started with an individual sport, so Hapkido. It's Korean based, and they typically, if I remember this correctly, they use it more for women's self-defense and also in the police department. I'm not sure if that's still the case now, but during that time, that was definitely the case. So it was me and my brother, and the only real motivating factor for me taking part in that sport specifically was the fact that me and my brother got to spar. But after a while, it only goes so far when that's the sole motivator. So me and my brother actually both transitioned into soccer. So we played for sidekicks.
Wow.
So here at Loop, we would play and practice, did that for a number of years. And I played soccer in middle school as well, for Jose Rios Middle School. Go Warriors. And after that, I originally planned to continue playing soccer into high school, but my freshman year, that was the time when I learned they were starting rugby. I think it was the second year that they had rugby for both men and women, or girls and boys. And I just said to myself, I think it's time to try something new yet again. I don't know if that's just a personality thing, but I figured why not? And turns out I wasn't too bad. And I really fell in love with it. So not just during the on season for that third quarter for the high school, for George Washington High School, outside of that, I would be doing practices and competitions with Paratoru Rugby Club. So I was probably playing rugby all year round from the moment I got introduced to it in freshman year of high school.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, rugby being something that you fell in love with, and the competitions took you to places. How was that feeling for, an island girl who fell in love with the sport and now she gets to travel?
Well, at first it was really scary. I mean, I just remember even first being introduced to the weight room. I think when I didn't have that structure for high school rugby or even rugby with Paratoru, I would go to the gym, and I remember this distinctly, and I would just run on the treadmill. I had no real guidance there. And so it wasn't until I reached out to my then coach in high school, Billy Chanot, about wanting to be stronger, wanting to do something other than running, because as you can imagine, if that's literally all you've done when you're so used to playing rugby, they're definitely two different things. Not to say running is bad or boring, but they're different, to put it short. So once that came into play, I started to take rugby very seriously, and just said, you know what, it's time to just see if you can compete at that level, at the international level, and represent the national team. And even then there was still a very small group of women who were willing to commit themselves to that type of training, because it is rigorous. But that taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about discipline and teamwork, commitment, perseverance. I mean, whew. And so doing all these things and finally being able to represent Guam on an international stage. For me, it was the 2011 Pacific Games in New Caledonia. Man, was that an amazing, crazy experience. We're competing with the best in Oceania. We're talking about Fiji, Samoa, and other islands that were there to compete in Rugby 7 specifically. That changed everything for me. There was no prouder moment than to stand on that field, on that pitch, put my hand across my chest and hear the Guam's national anthem, Guam hymn, play over the speakers, and see some of the other athletes there to support us. And then also to compete against these other countries that have way more experience in this sport or way more support or whatever the case be, and still have that same level of respect for one another, I thought was a game changer. But even in that specific experience, I also had a chance to recognize the inner workings of what it means to put a team together. So not just having enough athletes who are at that competitive level, but the funding, the competitive events leading up to an event such as the Pacific Games, to get those miles underneath your wheels, basically, before you go and step foot on an international stage and compete with athletes and teams who have been doing the same and more, or longer, I should say. So that showed me a whole nother part of competitive sport that I hadn't seen before. And for whatever reason, just gravitated and took responsibility on myself to help in that way, because for as well as the women's team performs in Asia, there's still a lot that goes behind it when it comes to having enough funding, because 7 to 12 athletes traveling, room and board, paying for the physio, paying for the coaches. It's a lot to take into consideration. And then also just protocols with competing and representing Guam. You're representing your country. So there's a specific etiquette, there's a specific protocol, there's a specific expectation of you and your team and everyone, your entire delegation, basically. So that I fell in love with and gravitated towards. And I think other administrators or sports developers recognize that in me as well. And so it just took off from there.
Tasi, we're going to take a break. Guys out there, we're going to take a break. We'll be back. But when we come back, we're going to find out how sports influenced her in choosing the career that she's in now. And we'll talk about the journey to physical therapy and how everything happened. So we'll be back with that. You're watching the One Micronesia Podcast, be brought to you by Docomo Pacific. It's better together.
It only gets better with more. Customize and save with the fastest internet speeds in the Marianas by adding mobile, phone, and TV to your bundle with Business Bundles Plus. Docomo Pacific Business. Work better together.
For the different beats of your life, we're here to keep you connected the way you want it. Plans made for you, by you. Build your own bundle with Link. Select the internet, entertainment, mobile, and home phone plans that fit your lifestyle. Pay for what you want, not for what you don't. Build your own bundle and save with Link.
And we are back. The One Micronesia Podcast, be brought to you by Docomo Pacific. It's better together. All right, so let's continue the talk. We learned we got to know her and know her story, and in her story, what she did here on Guam when it came to sports, and especially rugby itself, and competing elsewhere, competing and representing Guam on the international stage. What an amazing story. So now we get to find out how she fell in love or how she found physical therapy as something that she needs to work towards and build as a career. So Tasi, welcome back, and let's talk about it. How did the journey start for you?
I think it really took hold when I went to New Caledonia in 2011. That's when I first met our then physiotherapist, another term for physical therapist from New Zealand, Coach Peter Hunt. So this was my first real interaction with anyone from that profession, from this profession, I should say. And we only had 9 players. And so with rugby sevens, the typical team is about 12. With that being said, there was a lot on the line with the starters and for the reserves as well. It was so important to have Coach Pete there to make sure we were recovering correctly, to make sure our pre-existing injuries or new injuries from that tournament were being attended to. And fortunately, we were able to partake in the entire competition with only one serious injury that ended up not being as serious as we had anticipated, which is a good thing. So that showed me basically how much of an impact a physiotherapist or a physical therapist can have on a traveling sports team. And from there, I literally remember this. The entire tournament, I was just asking him question after question after question. And I mean, he was involved in everything, for the amount of our hydration, what we were eating, when we were eating it. And he had this entire kit, this entire room set up just for us to make sure we were ready to compete. And I can only imagine if we had someone alongside us the entire time we were training, or for multiple tournaments on island. And I said, well, this is something I could totally see myself doing. You're still being involved with the sport, and you're still able to travel and represent your country, but you can have more of an impact on, instead of just you as a player with your team, you can have an impact on the entire team as far as making sure they're recovering well. Same thing, that their injuries are being attended to and they're ready to perform, not just physically, but mentally, because that really did play into our confidence as well.
Talk about the ups and downs. And I know, like, in everybody's journeys, we always, experience the ups and the downs. So tell us more about your story.
Yeah. So for that point in time, I really wanted to do physical therapy. I said, that's what I want to do. And so I got into the School of Health Science at University of Guam, exercise science specifically as my concentration with a minor in nutrition. And I did that, went through the motions of getting that degree, but I more or less lost sight because I was so involved in the sports administration, sports delegate role here on Guam for the Guam Rugby Football Union, for the Guam National Olympic Committee, and other committees that are associated with the Guam National Olympic Committee as well. So I kind of lost sight until Dr. Brian Claris actually joined the faculty, I should say, not the staff, the faculty at the University of Guam. So he had just returned as a physical therapist, and he was also teaching, and he's still teaching at the university as well. But him coming back and having conversations with him about physical therapy actually re-sparked my interest in pursuing that further. But I was still at a point where, you know what, I'm not sure. I've established all these things with all these organizations here on Guam, and I think I got a good thing going and I can see it taking off from here. But okay, so I said, well, I can go to the States. I can try other healthcare professional related goals. So health education, I got involved with. I was a patient care coordinator for a while, biometrics screener, and a physical therapy technician. I did all of those, and it wasn't until I did the physical therapy technician job for a while that I realized, oh, physical therapy is what I want to do. It's definitely what I want to do. I've done all these different roles, and compared to the sports administration, sports development type of roles that I was doing, I realized oh my gosh, I would much rather be doing this. And I feel like I could offer way more to my community in that aspect. So I said, let's do this. But even then I was still not sure. I said, well, maybe let me try for a master's. I'll try for a master's in kinesiology. So I applied to a few universities and I got the acceptance letter and I had it in hand. And this is already 2 years living in the States, in Virginia. And I realized, no, you know what? You can do this. You are good enough. You can get into these programs and you can get through it like the rest of them. So let's go for it. So that was the moment where I really decided it's time, Tasi. Quit with all these other different roles. This is what you need to be doing. So that's when I said, all right, putting everything aside, PT school it is.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to get to learn what Tasi is doing at Custom Fitness and how you can get involved and if you need the services that they provide. So we'll talk more about that. That's coming up in just a little bit. We're going to take a break and we'll back with more of the podcast. It's the One Micronesia Podcast being brought to you by Docomo Pacific. It's better together.
It only gets better with more. Customize and save with the fastest internet speeds in the Marianas by adding mobile, phone, and TV to your bundle with Business Bundles Plus. Docomo Pacific Business. Work better together.
For the different beats of your life, we're here to keep you connected the way you want it. Plans made for you, by you. Build your own bundle with Link. Select the internet, entertainment, mobile, and home phone plans that fit your lifestyle. Pay for what you want, not for what you don't. Build your own bundle and save with Link.
And we're back. One Micronesia Podcast. We're still here with the one, the only, the amazing Tasi Ada, who is a physical therapist at the Custom Fitness here in Guam. So, Tas, you graduated. This is a cool part. You literally graduated months after. You're back on island. You're back home. Welcome back. And then you're right when you get here, off the bat, you go straight into work. So tell us, people watching right now, tell us more about what you do.
Basically, I can provide your typical services for physical therapy. So, for example, a lot of the common injuries that people will seek physical therapists out for would be things like low back pain, or knee pain, or even post-operative. So maybe they had a total knee replacement, things of that nature. And what my role is to evaluate where you're at functionally, what your current limitations are, and to use that as a guide and create a plan that works best for that patient to get them back to the things that they were doing prior to their injury or their surgery, whatever that may be. So that typically falls in the realm of general orthopedics. But what I really want to focus on is actually a specialty area known as pelvic floor rehabilitation or pelvic health. Another term that has been used in the past is women's health, but both men and women have pelvic floor and muscles. And that's basically a group of muscles that work to support your bowel and bladder functions, as well as the other organs that surround the bowel and bladder. Other things that it supports is the trunk stability. So anything here at the torso, making sure everything here is nice and stable, as well as sexual function. And so there are a number of signs and symptoms that relate to what is known as the umbrella term as pelvic floor dysfunction. So some common symptoms would be difficulty urinating, or the opposite, meaning the inability to hold your urine in, also known as urinary incontinence. But there are other things with the bowels, as well as sexual function, that are symptoms associated with those types of pelvic floor dysfunction that I also want to aim to treat. Another area that I also want to focus in on the side would be prenatal fitness. So exercise for women who are pregnant. And that is something that just grown to really love. Ultimately, I want to serve the women of Guam. That's really where I want to focus. Not only as a woman, but as a former athlete. Maybe I'm a current athlete. I don't know. Powerlifting. I don't know. I don't want to put that term on me, but for athletes of all levels, whether it be recreational or elite competitive athletes, all women are welcome. And there are very few therapists who can offer these types of services. So I definitely recognize that there's a need for this as well. I know it's topics that most don't want to talk about, but that's what I'm here for, and we can work on it together.
Taz, let's talk about another thing that you do other than your busy day at the Custom is you have a podcast, which we are happy to have on to include into our KUAM Podcast Network. It's called Talks with Taz. Now let's talk about that. How did that all start for you? You just wanted to chat it up with your friends and the professionals in your field. How did it all start for you?
Well, I think one of my biggest regrets from the moment I started to compete internationally and also represent Guam as a sports delegate internationally was not documenting it enough, not sharing that enough. And I think during that time too, Facebook was definitely popular, but Instagram was slowly taking off at that point, but it wasn't as popular as it is now. And that was one of my biggest regrets, was not creating more awareness around these roles and the opportunities you can have as an athlete representing Guam. So I just had these thoughts in my head of, man, I still have so much access to all these amazing athletes, clinicians, sports administrators, and developers. I can still, make something from that, from the mistakes that I made in the past. So I said, well, I'm an avid podcast listener. I love listening to podcasts. I am definitely one who can strike up conversation and just talk your face off. But I also love learning and hearing about other people's stories, experiences, knowledge that they can share. So I said, well, why not? Let's do this. Let's just see what happens. What's the worst that's going to happen? Someone's going to say no and they don't want to be on a part of it, or nobody listens to it. At the end of the day, I benefit from it. I always learn from those podcasts. So I'm enjoying it so far, and I'm just kind of taking it as it is, doing one a month, give or take. But that's really what I wanted to do, is spread the word about these experiences here on Guam, here in the Asia Pacific region, and then beyond that.
All right, guys, we're going to take a break. But when we come back, it's the last part of it where we close out. We hear the last messages. We'll hear where you guys can go find and follow Custom Fitness or Toss and then find out more information about the programs that they got down there. So we'll be back with that. You're watching the One Micronesia Podcast. We're brought to you by Docomo Pacific. It's better together.
It only gets better with more. Customize and save with the fastest internet speeds in the Marianas by adding mobile, phone, and TV to your bundle with Business Bundles Plus. Docomo Pacific Business. Work better together.
For the different beats of your life, we're here to keep you connected the way you want it. Plans made for you, by you. Build your own bundle with Link. Select the internet, entertainment, mobile, and home phone plans that fit your lifestyle. Pay for what you want, not for what you don't. Build your own bundle and save with Link.
And we're back. One Micronesia Podcast. We're here with the one, the only, the amazing Tasi Ada, a physical therapist at the Custom Fitness Guam. So, Tasi, the last part of it. Before we get to the details and where people can follow you and Custom Fitness and know about the programs, let's talk about this. A quick message before we close out. A message to those who are watching right now and are learning your story and feeling inspired by your journey and want to pursue physical therapy or other things. What message would you have for them?
My biggest message would be, don't let that voice of doubt creep into your mind, just go for it and start making an action plan on day one. So if I thought even for another split second when I saw that acceptance letter and said, you know what, I'm going to just do PT school, forget this. If I had sat there for another split second, I probably would have changed my mind. And so if there's something that you want to do, don't let the fear of failure or that self-doubt kick in and keep you from pursuing things that you may have not otherwise pursued in the past or in the future, because you never know where it will lead you.
All right. Wise words from the awesome, the amazing Tasi Ada, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So, Tasi, before we close out, where can people go follow you, Custom, or where can people go find out more information about the gym? Because the gym is just an amazing gym. So how can people go about doing that?
Well, so the contact number here at Custom Fitness is 989-0436. So you can always call the office here. Other ways you can connect with us is the Custom Fitness page on IG, and I can send that all through. But if you literally just search Custom Fitness KUAM on Instagram, you will find them. They will pop up. And now we have a physical therapy IG, CFG Physical Therapy. You can also follow that as well. And I will shoot you all that specific information, so you can just click on it or copy and paste. And then for me personally, mine is Gikanton Tasi, or by the sea, but it's GIKANTONTASI. It's a mouthful. But yeah, those are ways you can connect. There's also Facebook too. So if you search any of those, you can find any of us on that platform as well.
All right. Well, Tasi, thank you so much. I know you're busy. You're currently at work, and you've given me the opportunity and the time to sit down and chit chat with you. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you again for having me. It was so much fun.
I know. All right, guys, that pretty much concludes another One Micronesia Podcast, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
The One Micronesia Podcast is brought to you by Docomo Pacific. Better together.